Hi, and welcome to Inside View. I am your host, Joel Metzger, and joining me on this show is Kirk Ford. He's the chairman of the board for the Tuolumne County Resource Conservation District. Kirk, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So you're a first-time guest, and I actually just met you within the last few months talking about the Calaveras Conserves effort and learning about a very, very exciting grant that you were a big part of landing that's going to benefit not just Tuolumne County, but a big portion of Calaveras County as well. So give me just a quick preview of that, because we're going to get into that later before we go into some of your background.
Sure. The Tuolumne County Resource Conservation District received some funding from the state of California to implement a region-wide water conservation program that is going to include a variety of different programs, including rebates, including workshops, including a lot of different things. So we've got a lot of money to be able to spend over the next 3 or 4 years for a water conservation, a regional, very aggressive water conservation program.
And I think it's fair to say that this infusion of staff and capital is going to make a huge difference for these small water districts who don't have huge capabilities.
Absolutely. Our plan is to work not only with the 2 or 3 larger water districts in both Tuolumne and Stanislaus and Calaveras County, but also with the smaller mutual water companies, the smaller utility districts, and even the private landowners who are currently on springs and wells.
So we're going to delve into that in a big way a little later in the show, so stay tuned for that. But before we get into that, I just wanted people to be introduced to you a little bit. Okay. And let's go all the way back to where you were born and grew up.
I was actually born in Inglewood, California, grew up in the South Bay area of Los Angeles, and got out of there as soon as I possibly could and went up to Humboldt State University up in Arcata, got a wildlife management degree from Humboldt State, did my graduate work at the University of Montana, came back to California and worked for various consulting companies and large engineering companies doing wildlife surveys and biological surveys. After that, I did that for about 15 years, and after that I got hired on with Stanislaus County as a senior planner in their land use planning department and worked there for another 15 years, eventually becoming the planning director of Stanislaus County. And I retired from there in 2012.
And when did you land in Tuolumne County? How long ago was that?
About 1978, 79 was the first time I showed up.
78, 79. So you've been there for a long time and enjoying, many of the beautiful scenery and all that. But what is it about Tuolumne that really drew you in and has kept you there?
I think it's the resources that are there. The mountains, I've always loved the mountains. The reason I couldn't stand in LA was I preferred being next to rivers and up in mountains fishing or doing something. And it's just the location in the area and the people. I fit in there better than I did elsewhere.
And it was worth a pretty long commute, because if you're living up in the higher country of Tuolumne and working down in Stanislaus County, that's no small drive each day.
No, it took about an hour plus every day or more each way to get down there.
Worth it?
Yes and no. Okay. I was able to retire from there, so
yeah,
sure.
So I just wanted to touch on your experience in the planning department. You worked your way up and eventually led that department, and this is a county of 500,000 people plus.
Right.
What was that like to be in a position that, it's always controversial, land use and planning, and how did that treat you?
Well, one of my coworkers told me, if you don't like politics, don't get into land use planning. And that pretty much defined how it all went. It was an exciting job, it was an interesting job, it was an adventuresome job. There was something different happening every single day. Balancing the political needs of elected officials with the desires of landowners or the regulations that you had to deal with was always interesting.
Interesting. Yeah. Good word to kind of sum it all up, because I know, working with the planning director here, it's a roller coaster ride for sure, but you are bound by laws that you have to enforce.
Right. Every county has their own zoning regulations, and they're different from county to county.
Right. So you worked on that, and I imagine that was an all-consuming job, but you also found time to get involved with the formation of a resource conservation district.
Yes.
And what was the first time you ever even heard of the conservation district idea, and how long did it kind of stew in your brain until you got involved with making one?
Well, let me give you a little bit of history about resource conservation districts first.
Okay.
Resource conservation districts were originally created back in the 1930s as a response to the Dust Bowl era. And basically what they were set up to do was to have the local ranchers and farmers put in conservation practices on their properties to reduce the amount of erosion, the soil erosion that was going on. So they would do cover crops, or they would do windrows, or they would do some other type of water conservation as well. And the local farmers and ranchers, the federal government realized that the only way they're going to get money to some of these folks is if local volunteers, local people took control over how and where to funnel that money, or how to help funnel that money. Because basically the same as today, a lot of people didn't trust the federal government and were wondering, why are they coming onto my farm? Well, they're coming onto your farm to help you save the soil. That was how they originally got formed. And there's over 3,000 RCDs in the country right now. There's 100 of them in California, all run by volunteer board members who are landowners or farmers in the area, to try to bring conservation practices into that local area. So I had known about RCDs for quite some time. And in early 1980s, I went to the Tuolumne County Board of Supervisors and said, hey, this is a really good idea. But at the time, the Tuolumne County Board of Supervisors was not very open to the idea of forming another government agency or quasi-government agency. So it took quite a bit of time before we had a farm advisor, Jay Norton was his name, back in 2004, 2003, who really pushed the idea, knew what RCDs were, knew what value they were to the local area, knew how they could funnel money into the local ranchers and farmers, and really pushed the idea to the board of supervisors in Tuolumne County, and gained support, garnered support from the board, garnered support from the local farm bureau, garnered support from the local ranchers, some of the local ranchers, not all of them, certainly. And we had to set up an election from a vote of the people of Tuolumne County. Do you want to form a resource conservation district? We had to go through a local agency formation commission procedure, LAFCO procedure, to get that to happen. We had to get the local elector office to write up the proper legislation or resolution or whatever it was for people to vote on, an initiative. And I'll be darned if in 2005 we didn't get almost 60% of the people of Tuolumne County to say, yes, we want to form a resource conservation district. So an associate of mine over there said, you better put your money where your mouth is and your time where your mouth is. Put your name in to become one of the board members. So in February, or actually I think it was in January 2006, the Board of Supervisors appointed me and 7 others to be on the board of directors. And in February we had our first meeting, and I've been the chairman ever since.
So you've been the one who's kind of leading this organization from the board level all the way through?
With the assistance of other board members, absolutely.
Okay. And was it kind of something that was very smooth and easy to fit into the existing organizations and work with everyone, and was everyone open, or was it kind of something that people had to get used to and that you had to take some time to?
Well, truthfully, I'll tell you, a lot of people in Tuolumne County still don't know what the Tuolumne County Resource Conservation District is and what we're doing. We've been pretty small up until now. We've been having a few projects here and there, but nothing that really had the public awareness of what this district can do. So it's been an up and down roller coaster of time, and I think working with the county government, working with the other agencies, working with the water districts and folks that we work with, it's all been very, very smooth. Everybody's been very supportive.
So you mentioned that this began during the Dust Bowl, and it was to get aid to these farmers in order to be good stewards of the land. Now, there must have been kind of an evolution to where now, is there a slightly different role, or is it the same idea, just not with the Dust Bowl, with other issues?
It is exactly the same idea. Basically, our mission, or what RCDs do, is to go wherever they can, however they can, to find funds, to find money to be able to do conservation practices in their local area. And that's exactly why they were set up, and that's exactly what they were doing then. Now, conservation practices then were, like you said, tied to the Dust Bowl, tied to soil conservation, and a little bit of surface water conservation as well, tied to farming. Since the 30s, obviously there have been other issues that have come up, and resource conservation districts now touch just about every natural resource you can think of, from timber to range, noxious weeds, air quality even in some cases, stormwater runoff. There's a variety of different things other than just soil erosion that resource conservation districts deal with. They do school education programs. They do like community garden programs. Different RCDs do all kinds of different things.
What are the specific advantages of having an RCD handle these programs versus another agency?
RCDs, to me, RCDs are made up of local farmers, ranchers, property owners, local folks from the local area. So you're not, you may be using state money or you may be using federal money or private foundation grants, but you've really got that tie to the land for the local area. That's what's really important in Tuolumne County, and I know it is in Calaveras County as well, you know, is the tie to the land, the tie to the area, the tie to the location is very, very important. And to me, that's the biggest advantage, is you have local people dealing with local issues in a local way.
The idea of RCDs has caught on some places, but not everywhere. You said there are 100 in California. Calaveras County does not have an RCD currently, right, but there are some people who are talking about it. I know even the Board of Supervisors may be getting into that conversation. So you mentioned what it took in Tuolumne County to get it going. Would a similar process need to take place here?
I would assume so, yeah.
Okay.
You'd need to go through a vote.
So the board would need to get involved, and then eventually the people would need to vote on it. And then at that point, you need to have volunteer board members be appointed and take some responsibility. And it really sounds to me like the more effort you put into it, the more you can get out of it. Is that pretty much true?
That's very true. You know, when we first got going, we were all very, very enthusiastic and had a little bit of money to spend and tried moving forward, and found in the real world, of course, we got formed right before the Great Recession hit and the economic troubles happened. So there wasn't a whole lot of money out there to go. So we've been on a fiscal roller coaster, very much so, over the last 10 years.
Gotcha. But you had a windfall recently.
We did.
And it is a big windfall, and I'm excited to talk about this with you because I think it's just such a huge benefit to this county and Tuolumne County and the entire area that you can spend money in. And it's important that we note this money can only be spent within the boundaries of the T-STAN IRWM. So can you talk about that just right off the bat so people know?
Sure. The state of California, in their infinite wisdom, decided to set up funding boundaries of where you can fund grants through Proposition 84. And one of the areas, they tied them to watersheds. So our watershed area, the Tuolumne-Stanislaus Integrated Regional Water Management Area, is just the Tuolumne and Stanislaus watershed. So in Tuolumne County, that incorporates all of Tuolumne County, which is all Tuolumne and Stanislaus watersheds. In Calaveras County, it only includes the Highway 4 corridor, which is right along the North Fork of the Stanislaus River. We also have that little area along Long John Creek that is over by Copperopolis. So the Highway 4 corridor and the Copperopolis area are the areas that we can fund these things in Calaveras County. Hindsight is great. Had we thought about it, and had the time to do it, the grant turnaround time was very quick. We probably would have worked with the local IRWM group, the MAC, to be able to extend that through all of Calaveras County.
But the fact is, we still do have a pretty big chunk of the population centers of Calaveras. We are missing the Valley Springs area, when there are a lot of people who live down there. But San Andreas. But Copperopolis, Murphy's, Angels Camp, Arnold, all of those would be within this.
Yes.
And I also wanted to just give a kind of a brief description of what an IRWM is. You just mentioned it was a funding area, and that's what the state of California decided to do. But tell me about the T-STAN.
Yeah, they're also, what the state has decided is that the way to shovel money into these areas is to have an integrated approach to these projects. So the Tuolumne-Stanislaus Integrated Regional Water Management Joint Powers Authority is a collaborative of water agencies throughout Calaveras and Tuolumne County, collaboration of other public agencies like the County of Tuolumne, and nonprofit organizations. Tuolumne River Trust is part of it. Audubon Society is even part of it. So we've taken this collaboration of people who are interested in water resources and water resources management, and those that are required to manage those water resources, the water districts, gotten them together to create a generalized integrated water management plan for the entire region, for these two watersheds, the Stanislaus and Tuolumne watersheds. And we've got a plan written, everybody's approved it, everybody's agreed to it, and now we can move forward through this one particular state funding mechanism to acquire grant funds, specifically for the Tuolumne and Stanislaus watersheds.
And so this was a process that has been ongoing for how long, would you say?
I think when I first took office as a board member of the RCD, I remember that Tuolumne Utility District was talking about the IRWM work. So DWR, Department of Water Resources with the state of California, has been working this for just about 8 years now, I think.
Okay.
7 or 8 years.
And so at this point, now that it's been off and running for quite some time, projects are brought forward, evaluated, kicked back and forth. Eventually, the cream floats to the top, and then the group as a whole decides these are the ones that we're going to move forward with.
Yes.
And then those are sent off to DWR?
The Department of Water Resources has specific, through this Prop 84 funding, we're in the last round of that now. They had several different rounds of funding that they gave to IRWM regions throughout the entire state. So you have to comply with their guidelines, you have to prepare a proposal, you have to prepare them, to show that you're meeting their priorities. So it's not just finding a couple projects that we all think are really good and sending it to DWR. You've really got to match, in this particular funding way that DWR is doing it, you've really got to match their priorities and make sure that your projects meet the things that they want them to meet.
Which brings us to the water conservation grant that you are administering, the RCD is.
Sure.
Who came up with the idea to make that application?
The Tuolumne River Trust actually has in the plan an outreach program that's a smaller version of what we were doing. This particular round of grants was related to drought response. What can you do regionally related to drought? So we've got a couple of other projects in there that also got funded. But as we were thinking about it and talking about it, we had a lot of discussion in our meetings about how large should this thing be. It started off in the RCD's mind as, well, maybe we'll get funding to do some rain barrels. And that was about it. We'll do a little rain barrel project for a couple $100,000 and call it good, and that'll be good. And then as we looked and saw some of the other programs that had been funded by DWR throughout the state, in the Bay Area and in San Diego area and other places, on these major conservation programs, offering major rebates, offering major outreach and techniques and practices, I thought, you know what? Why not? Let's just go for it. And it went from here to here to here, and then it came back to, here. So it was a collaborative effort of a lot of the members of the IRWM and a lot of the water districts saying, we don't have the funds to be able to implement as great, a big conservation program. We spend $15,000, $20,000 a year as our budget for conservation, but I've had to spend $100,000 this year on it, and that means I've had to delay doing some maintenance on our stuff. We just simply don't have the rate base or the ratepayer base to be able to budget a lot of money for a conservation program in these rural areas, especially here, Calaveras and Tuolumne County. So
this seemed like a perfect fit for the RCD to come in and apply for money to fill this void.
Right.
And so the application went out. How much was awarded to the...
The total grant amount was about $8 million, I think, to about 4 different projects, I think. And the RCD received about $3.5 million to do a region-wide water conservation program over 4 years.
That's real money.
That's real money.
That's significant, especially for an area like this. Now, if you're down in LA, maybe that's not so much. But
right. Well, that was actually one of the justifications that we gave to DWR. About 97% of the water, the surface water in this region, in the Stanislaus and Tuolumne River watersheds, leaves these counties. It doesn't stay in Calaveras County. It doesn't stay in Tuolumne County. It goes to downstream users. So, and in Calaveras County, there are some water rights associated with your water districts that are here. In Tuolumne County, we purchase water. So, and we have very, very small ratepayer basis. We've got 50,000 people in Tuolumne County. I'm not sure what the population is in Calaveras County.
About 42,000.
About 40 something, I think. So that's not, and not all of those people are ratepayers. Not all of them are there. So there's very little ability for the local districts to be able to fund such a thing.
So now that the money's here, I know that you just recently got the final sign-off, is that correct?
Right.
Saying, okay, this is good to go.
Right.
First order of business, is it to hire a coordinator?
It absolutely is. We are going to hire a full-time person to do nothing but water conservation coordination with all of the districts, all of the mutual water companies, all of the smaller companies, and with all of the landowners and people who are living on springs and wells, because they're being affected at all. They just don't have the ability to go apply for a Calaveras County Water District rebate.
Right. So you're going to hit everyone who uses water in these counties?
I hope so. It's my goal to make sure that within the first few months of this thing, or the first 6 months, let's say, that nobody in either of these two counties can say, oh, I didn't know about that.
So what are some strategies in order to achieve that goal?
We are going to probably start, right now, like you said, we're hiring our regional coordinator, and their first step is to set up a hotline, a phone number, and a website. We have an office in downtown Sonora, and then to start the media blitz and do whatever we can from outreach from local areas on all the different websites and all the different newspapers and all the different ways that we can possibly do it, signs on the road, whatever we can do. Much like Calaveras Conserves has already set up some signs over here, whatever we can do to get folks to see that there's a program coming. And then through that program, get all of the practices implemented, get the rebate program set up, get the outreach workshops set up. In fact, there's something in August 22nd, I think, over in Groveland, there's going to be a summit where there's going to be some pretty good landscape gray water demonstrations.
So you can partner with existing programs that are already trying to do this kind of thing,
Absolutely.
But also you're going to expand it widely. And so once you have that website set up, will that kind of be like the place people could go to learn all about the program and what's out there, and as new things are rolled out, that would go on the website?
Absolutely, but I don't want to rely solely on a website, because not everybody in these two counties goes to websites or is website savvy.
Very true. Very true.
So we need other types of outreach. And I mean, literally, during the frog jump, you've got banners across downtown Angels Camp. During the Motherlode Roundup, we've got banners across downtown Sonora. I mean, I'm really looking to make this thing so that nobody can say I didn't know about it.
And you're going to have an actual brick and mortar headquarters in Sonora?
We have the RCD office right now is in downtown Sonora, and that is going to be that is also the office for the Tuolumne IRWM,
okay.
JPA, but it's also going to be like water conservation headquarters as well.
Very cool. So let's go through some of the offerings, and let's just so people know what's coming.
Sure. Like I said, we're going to have a hotline. You can call and we can tell you where you can get this information. We're going to have the website. We're also setting up numerous water conservation workshops where we can demonstrate how to do certain things, how to deal with your landscaping, how to deal with the issues that you have. If one of the things we want to look at is a laundry to landscape program where you take the gray water that comes out of your washing machine and send it over to some of the landscape on your property, like watering some of the bigger trees. It's not just, you don't just run a hose over there. There's technical aspects that you have to deal with. But that's a kind of how to do it workshop that we want to put on, and there'll be a lot of different ones. We're also looking at, like I said, a lot of different types of advertisement, a lot of types of outreach. We're looking at providing on-call water audits, where we will have a water auditor come to your business or to your house and evaluate what you can do to conserve more water. Maybe even do a water usage test and see what's using the most water. In some cases, we're working with the Amador-Tuolumne Community Action Agency, ATCA, and for income eligible households, renters, or property owners, if you're income eligible, the water audits and the installation of the water conserving devices is going to be free. For those who are not income eligible, the installation of those devices will probably include a pretty significant rebate, not just $10 for a toilet. It's going to be a pretty substantial amount of money to help you replace your toilet or replace your shower head.
And then about 2 minutes left. I just want to make sure we
Sure.
hit the rest of those things.
Yeah, the other thing that we're doing is a hotel-motel conservation program. We're looking at a restaurant conservation program as well. Where they have sprayers in the kitchens that they use. And those sprayers, they use a lot of water. If you replace those with a low-flow sprayer, you can save almost 30,000 gallons a year. So there's a lot of different things we can do. We're looking at a business landscape modifications if we need to in some places. A vacation home program, because there's people that are just here for a few weeks out of the year. Look at a seasonal shutoff. Looking at working with the schools, obviously. Also, we're going to put in a couple, maybe 3 very large demonstration sites that show how to do this. But I think the key to the biggest part of this program is going to be the water audits and the rebates of how we're going to be able to get conservation fixtures or conservation techniques onto people's businesses and homes and be able to help them pay for doing that, or do it for free if you're income eligible.
I can't say how perfect this is as someone in the water industry. This was so much needed, and this is just going to fill this need in a perfect way. So I'm so glad that we have this going.
Good.
And I know that I speak for all of Calaveras County in this region. We're looking forward to working with you on this.
Good. We're looking forward to it too.
So thank you for joining us on the show, and let's touch base in 6 months and see how it's going, okay?
Yeah, I hope you know that we have a conservation program going then.
Yeah. Thank you, Kirk.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining me on this edition of Inside View. I'm your host, Joel Metzger, and I hope you join me next time.